So we've got our bottom end here, and we're just going to slide that bearing in for now. We're going to find our piston and make sure we have this pointed toward the exhaust. Get the pin here for it. Yeah, I am on the right side. Alright, so we got our piston here with our pin started, and we're going to try to squeeze that down on the rod. Just had to slide that pin back just a touch there, and now we need to get it lined up. There we go. Just had to squeeze it in there a little bit. I'm going to have to lay this down and maybe tap that pin back in there again. Just going to support the piston there with this piece of wood. Okay, that's back in where it needs to be, and that'll probably stay there because all we need to do is just put rings back on here. Go ahead and get the top end kind of halfway close to where it needs to be. It's not going to be hard to put on there because there's no rings. So try to get this boot out of the way enough to get these screws started. I put all those screws in one little bin here, so here's all the screws. Now the gasket maker will take up a few thousandths, so we'll take that into calculations with our squish. Now this one back here looks tricky. I'm gonna need some needle nose. Got a T27 here. Tighten these down by hand. Okay, just gonna snug them down just so it doesn't move at all, because I did just finger tighten it. We got to pull it all back apart in just a second anyways. There we go. Alright, so now the idea behind the squish is using the piston to compress a piece of lead that's actually going to be inside of here. So there's the, I don't know if you can see that, but there's the piston coming up and down right there. So we'll get a piece of lead here, and I've got a couple of different thicknesses, and I'm looking for about 20 thousandths. Well, I'm looking for a little less than 20 thousandths because the gasket maker will take up that, but I'll take what I get as long as it's not really thin, and that's what I just want to check. So what I've got is a piece of plumbing solder here, and this is about 80 thousandths, so it has quite a bit to compress to get it right. So that's 80 thousandths already. The main thing you want is for it to be all the way to the back of the wall there, because you want it to be on that squish band. I'm going to rotate you here so you can see a little bit better. So I've got it pushed in there all the way, and I'm up against, let me make sure I'm right. Yeah, so I'm up against the wall there. Now I'm going to bring the piston up, and I'm going to use the flywheel to compress. Well, that's really compressing. There we go, to compress that lead. So this very tip here, the very tip is what we're actually going to measure, because the rest of this is not necessarily the squish. So, well, the tip is kind of rounded around because the piston has a little slack in it. So let's measure it just a touch behind that. So there you go. I've got 25 thousandths right there. Hopefully you can read that. So 25 thousandths. So it's going to be a little bit more than 25, maybe 28 thousandths by the time I put the goo in there, the adhesive for the cylinder to glue it on, because I'm not doing the base gasket. But there you go, guys. So there's that. I got to get the rings in, and this guy will be ready to rock if this carburetor is okay. I'm going to go ahead and get a carburetor kit for it coming, but we might try this and see if it'll start up with what we have. So So there goes the piston. We pull that out, and here's this. So we're going to go ahead and put the rings in here and get this ready to go in. You can see it turned out pretty good, actually, considering what it was before. And so let's get the rings in here. I ordered these again off of eBay, but you can get them from a couple different places. These are 44 millimeter, 1.2 millimeter high rings, and I double checked. Evidently there's a couple of different sizes, so you can take a measuring device here somehow and go across it, and it's 1.7 to 2 right now across that way, and that's probably because I was sanding on it along that edge. So we know that is the this is the 44 millimeter piston. So let's go ahead and get these rings on here. They just open up right across the top there. Open that up there. So we've got two. So you see we've got these notches here, and then on the piston here we have these corresponding pins. And so when you put these on here, you want to make sure you have these notches that are on the top of here, you know, orientated properly. So we're just gonna lay that around there. Without breaking them, hopefully. There we go. Perfect. Now they're in there. So see how the notches correspond with the pin there. So that's when we need to make sure we get those in there right. And then over here we got a second one. That pops right off. These are really easy to open. Evidently Caber rings are high-end rings, or the decent rings. They're not factory. Well, they might be factory, but this is what we have here. And then again, we want to make sure we have our notch and our pin. Our pin on this one is over here, so I'm just going to start it there and work it around. See if I can get it in the groove. There we go. It snaps right in there, so we're ready to go. There you go. So the exhaust side of the piston faces forward of the saw, and this has an arrow right here on top of it. So we can go ahead and put this piston, we can go ahead and put this back in place and go ahead and put our snap ring on here. So we can get that pin started. There we go. Kind of wiggle it around, get it halfway lined up, and I did grease up. Well, let's make sure I greased up this bearing. I might not have. I don't know. It's dry. Need to go ahead and put some two-stroke oil on here and get this ready to go. So what I like to use is this little syringe here, and I'll put a link to this down below so you can use it too. And all I've got is just straight Husqvarna 2-cycle oil in it, and that'll help kind of get things. But it's really nice because you can see I'm just lightly squeezing it, and it's coming out just perfect, you know, just what you need. And it doesn't drip and it doesn't go everywhere, and we can just set that down up here while we're assembling everything. So we got that in there. It's good. And we can go ahead and grab our piston here and our pin, pull that out of there. We can go ahead and lube this up a little bit too. You can see it's, you know, it's pretty nice. It just puts a nice little layer on there. Put a little bit on there. Kind of work that in there. So we're going to slide this in again, minding our arrow pointing toward the exhaust side of the saw. Slide that in there. We're just going to push the pin in the rest of the way with this screwdriver. There we go. Just like that. So now we need to find our snap ring that goes in here to hold the piston on. Okay, here's our snap ring. I got that out of our little parts bin here with all of our random things in it. I'm going to tilt this up on its side so you can see it a little bit better, and I can see it a little bit better. So let's look at the orientation of the other snap ring, and it looks like the open part is facing the furthest away from this little notch that's in here. So there's a little notch down here on this corner that's open a little bit more. So we're going to make sure we follow proper orientation. And I can see this thing flying everywhere already. Maybe not. I'm just going to get it started inside of there in that groove. And then I'm going to use the screwdriver again to help guide it in there. Okay, there we go. She is in there. In the groove and everything. So I'm just going to poke around here with the screwdriver and make sure that it's in there exactly where it needs to be. And it is. So that's awesome. Alright. Great. We're going to go ahead and lubricate this bottom end fairly well. So there's a bearing inside of here. So we're going to go ahead and pump some oil in there. There's bearings inside of here. Put some oil on that. There's a bearing on this side. Put some oil on that. That's why I like this syringe. It works really good for this. We make sure we got everything good to go. Yep. Spin everything around in there. Alright. So I've already cleaned this bottom end really well. Everything is flushed out as well as it can be. And we're just going to wipe down this surface here really good. Got our 3-bond 1184 here, and just going to pop the top on this. Now it says to spread it evenly and lightly on the whole surface. So I'm just going to do that very, very lightly. It says with a brush. I had a flux brush around here which would work, but I'm just going to use my finger here on this and go with that. Just move the piston out of the way and put some more. And it doesn't take much. I think it said let it tack up for about a minute. So just let it rest there for a minute, and then it should be ready to go. So I've wiped all these surfaces down with brake parts cleaner and a rag. So that's so that it's ready to go. There we go. And I wiped went ahead and wiped off the base of the cylinder here too. Got that cleaned up, ready to go. You can see here we're just spreading it on there. Alright, sorry about that. Actually the card got full, but either way, whatever. So I did get the rings in there. It just took a little bit of fussing, but no big deal. Okay, we got the boot on there, and we're gonna go ahead and get our bolts in place for the cylinder, and you might need to use a needle nose to drop this one at least, and this one in the back toward the intake side into the hole there, but no big deal. It'll go right in. And when you drop it like I do, you get yourself a magnet and you can fish it back out of there. And there we go. Got that one in. So I might go ahead and get this one started. T27 again. While I got everything out, I might go ahead and get this clamp ring in place for the intake boot. And that just needs to snap around the little lip there. At least there's half of it. Now let's see if we can get the other half wrapped around there. There we go. Alright, so then we can get to that by tightening it up from this side right here. Now we've got a screw back here. We're going to go ahead and get that in there. Needle nose again. Try to guide it into that hole. Just like that. Double check, make sure we're kind of moving free and everything's good to go. Starting it at kind of an angle. Getting that in there and then walking it around just like that. I'm just going to use this 1/4 inch gear wrench ratchet here and go crossways. Oh, what's next? Wow, we got to get this thing back together, huh? Where should we start? What do you think? Carburetor rebuild. We got to rebuild the carburetor because that thing is hard, dried out and rough. So let's get this thing apart and get a new kit in it.